Hello, welcome to the Charles River Conservancy Parkland show. My name is Renata von Tscharner, and we will be talking about the parklands and how to make the parklands not only more beautiful, but with less litter. And there is a very direct way of doing that, and that is to help pass the new bottle bill. And with me today, I have the Executive Director of MASSPIRG, Janet Domenitz, and she will be telling us about the bottle bill. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you so much for having me, Renata.
And how does the bottle bill fit into what the Conservancy does? It is very much part of the Conservancy's work to be an advocate for the parklands. As you know, we are very lucky here in Cambridge to have these wonderful parklands from the harbor all the way up to the Watertown border, and actually the Conservancy works all the way up to the Watertown Dam as well as on the other side of the river. Mm-hmm. And what our volunteers, and we have over 2,500 a year, and what they find is a lot of bottles. And it would be wonderful that these bottles don't get into the parklands, don't get into the water, and that is where your work comes in. So, Janet, tell us a bit about yourself. You're a Cambridge resident yourself.
Yes, I am.
And you are the Executive Director of MASSPIRG.
Yeah.
So tell us about how you got to MASSPIRG and what does MASSPIRG do?
Okay, well, I'll start with the first question. I got to MASSPIRG in 1980. I was right out of college, and I hope a good example of recycling, my very first campaign with MASSPIRG was to pass the original bottle bill back in the early 1980s. And that's really how I got hooked. It was just a very exciting campaign. The organization was relatively new, and those of us that worked to pass the bottle bill just had a great time building support around the state, working in the legislature, and ultimately being successful on the ballot. The bottle bill was on the ballot originally in 1982.
Just for people who are not familiar with the bottle bill,
yeah.
What did the original bottle bill, what did that provide for?
Well, anybody who's ever purchased a soft drink or a beer knows that you pay a nickel deposit in order to affect recycling. You bring it back and it starts a whole loop of getting that container recycled. And so the original bottle bill started that deposit system. The update that we're pushing now would get that deposit to cover all different kinds of containers, iced tea, Gatorade, vitamin drinks, all the kinds of beverages that frankly were not on the market back in the early 1980s. So it is just an update of this successful law that's been on the books for 25 years. Mm-hmm. And so I've been at MASSPIRG since 1980, and the organization, it stands for the Massachusetts Public Interest Research Group. And we do research, grassroots organizing, and lobbying around a range of public interest issues. Basically, we want to be the voice of the public. And for most of our issues, there is, a very loud special interest on one side, and the people's voice isn't being heard. And so we're there to do the research, come up with the solution, and bring citizens together to influence decision makers.
Yeah. I have a picture here of the bigger, better bottle bill. I recall when we were in the hearing room of the State House, and there were a lot of advocates for this bill that brought bottles in. So there was it was wonderful to have strong presence and a lot of people with green buttons.
Well, there's so much public support for this bill. I mean, anybody who goes outside knows there's litter on the streets, there's litter in the parks, there's litter on the riverbanks, there's litter everywhere made up substantially of these kinds of containers. Mm-hmm. And so there is tremendous public support for this update. And
so if you are one of those runners along the river, and some people take a bag with them as they run and pick up bottles, but that is wonderful when people do that. But we also want to work on the policy so that there is another way of getting rid of those bottles.
Well, of course, it shouldn't rely on individual people stopping during their walk or their jog or on the field when their kids are trying to, play soccer. We shouldn't rely on individual people having to carry around trash bags with them. We have a great recycling system in place with this deposit law. And there were, in the early 80s, no such drinks as bottled water and vitamin drinks. These beverages just were not on the market then. Mm-hmm. And as I said, this is just an update, bringing the law into the 21st century. It has been, and it still is, the most successful recycling program that we have. Over 70% of containers now are redeemed.
Now let's look at some of the facts here. So you mentioned that there was the first bottle bill in '83, and 30 billion containers. Can you give us a sense of, that's a huge amount of volume.
It is, but we're still missing a lot. So as I said a moment ago, of the beverage containers that do have a deposit, which right now is basically all sodas, Coke, Pepsi, those kinds of things, and beers, carbonated beverages. That's how the law was originally written. Of those, just about 70% are redeemed, and then another 5 or 10% are recycled. You put them out on your blue bin, for example, so you don't go back and get your nickel, but still they get into the recycling system. Only 20% of those containers are litter. Just flip that on its head for all those other containers I'm talking about: water, iced tea, vitamin drinks. 80% of those containers now end up as litter. Only 20% of those are recycled. So you see, we have a great system in place through the deposit law, and we just want to expand it so that all these other containers are covered.
Yeah, well, I want to show a picture of the Earth Day cleanup that was, you see here in Cambridge near the Weeks Bridge, and the Charles River Conservancy organizes all the volunteers on the Earth Day cleanup, which actually is the largest in the country. And I think we had 800 volunteers just on the Cambridge side. And in some of the years when we Earth Day cleanup, all the volunteers would fill the bags and then we would count the bottles
and see how,
because the bottle bill, an update of the bottle bill has been proposed before.
Oh, yes.
And I want you to address the issue of why this time we have more of a chance. So what we did is then we created piles of bottles of those that are redeemable and so those are not redeemable. And so that really made it very vivid for everybody cleaning up that day of how important it is to have a bill for that.
Right, because you can see when you make those piles that the pile of containers that are covered by the deposit system is small, and the pile of the containers that are not covered by the deposit system is huge.
Yeah.
And first, I want to just take a moment to say what great work the Conservancy does. I love that photo because it shows the kind of participation there is, the youth, the energy. Look how happy everybody is, and they're outdoors. And I just think the Conservancy does great work. So
well, thank you. And the wonderful thing is, our volunteers love doing it. So we have a lot of corporations, organizations, they come and volunteer and say, can we come again on the third Thursday in March or October? So they come back every year.
Right.
And so the groups are getting bigger, and they bring their own leaders, and they're doing a wonderful job.